Sup flappers, welcome back to another video. Yes, today we've left our cave down below and came back up to the surface because we're going to be talking about Ayato in a little more detail. Well, I guess when I say detail, I really mean speculations. I kind of know everybody probably already knows what he does. Everybody except a couple content creators and people who have triple bolted locked their doors onto the internet, right? So I'm here truthfully telling you guys, I don't look at leaks. I don't know what Ayato does yet. So take with this what you will. These are my criterias for what a character like Ayato needs to be able to do in order for him to be a successful character. And when I say successful, I really mean the way that meta-wise successful. Yae Miko, is she a successful character? I would say so, right? Financially, I'd imagine she pulled in great numbers for Mihoyo. There are a ton of people who really enjoy her and love her, and people holding on to dear hope that she gets her dedicated artifact set and then turns into this amazing character. So in of itself, Yae Miko, definitely a successful character, but meta-wise, I think people are going to be hard-pressed to say she's going to be highly utilized or preferred over other options. I hope that made sense. So in this video, I'm going to break down 3 aspects of all characters. You can take these 3 criteria essentially to all characters to analyze how they will perform both near in the future as well as far into the future, as long as these points stay relevant. So we have Xingqiu here as our guide as we start diving into Ayato, his kit, compatibility, and finishing off with longevity. So talking about his kit, I have the advantage of not knowing what the hell he does yet. So I'm going to take what his sprite shows as well as what we currently have for Hydro options and speculate on what role he needs to fulfill in order to essentially fill a huge demand right now. And when I say demand, I don't mean like there's a lack of Hydro units when it comes to utility. Yes, when it comes to numbers, Hydro units are severely lacking, but in terms of their utility and functions, in fact, you start to realize they cover a whole range of roles in many different teams. Primarily, nowadays, we look at Hydro characters, we see their role as more passive, supportive units, with the exception to Tartaglia, and we'll talk a little bit about Tartaglia a little later because Tartaglia's role ties much closer to Ayato than the other characters, right? So starting with someone like Xingqiu, who we have front and center, Xingqiu's role is to apply Hydro application as a consistent source of reaction opportunities, not being freeze, being vaporized. These are the 2 common ones. Then we have character like Kokomi, who fills in the healer role, as well as Barbara. They both have some level of Hydro application, Kokomi being the better one of the 2 when it comes to Hydro application without her being on the field. So we call that passive Hydro application, also known as Fa. Yes, I just made that up on the spot. But talking about Fa, or passive Hydro application, we have to really hunker down on why this concept, especially for Hydro character, is so important, because they are the catalyst of some of the best reactions in the game. And right now, the reason Xingqiu is so in demand and popular is because he's able to fulfill this role with very little issues. The uptime is great. It has a 4-star weapon that really highlights and assists the strength of his kit, being the sacrificial sword. And finally, not only are his Hydro application very consistent, they also deal a buttload of damage. And of course, the cherry on top, this character can also heal you, although very slightly, right? What's not to love about Xingqiu? Now, look at a character like Kokomi, who has a passive jellyfish that heals you for a truckload AoE heal while also applying Hydro application, with her burst being able to extend the jellyfish time, and as well, by the time her burst extension period is over, her jellyfish is back. So her Hydro application in actuality is longer than even Xingqiu, although it doesn't do much damage, right? So in this case, Kokomi oftentimes is preferred nowadays to be paired with Freeze, and Xingqiu has a much more dedicated role with single target carries such as your Mia or Hu Tao, of course, and even supporting units with raw damage like Raiden Shogun. You've seen Xingqiu in certain teams with Raiden Shogun as well, just facilitating more off-field damage. And of course, Machine Gun Fischl and all the sorts of layering of damage, Xingqiu just does an amazing job. So after talking about a couple of these Hydro characters, now let's talk about Ayato. What does Ayato need to do? Should Ayato come in and try to steal Xingqiu's thunder? Should Ayato be an upgraded version of Xingqiu? And I think it would be a mistake for miHoYo to design around Xingqiu and make something better than Xingqiu. Like I've mentioned before, there's just so much that Xingqiu does that if you are to drop a character, even if it's a 5-star that's better than Xingqiu, you are essentially power creeping the game and increasing the bar so much higher. Because to be better than Xingqiu, you need to have at worst the same consistency of Hydro application with no internal cooldown issues, as well as staying consistent, or if not more damage, as well as, if you want to play with the cherry a little bit, provide some sort of healing support or something like that, damage mitigation, doesn't matter, right? Or exchange that for even more damage, so then you're going to have a character with the same level of Hydro application but more damage. I don't think that's something both the community wants or miHoYo would ever want to see come to fruition. So now this is when we bring in Tartaglia, right? Tartaglia's role in the game has been very confusing in the early times, but now has really solidified himself as one of the better units for people to pilot. And with 3 reruns, wait, has it been 3 reruns? Tartaglia is quickly shaping up to be a 5-star that many people have either one copy of or even multiple constellations in some cases, as he spoofed you when you were pulling a 4-star on his banner. But this hack and slash Fatui Harbinger has shown us what's possible for an on-field dedicated main DPS Hydro carry. And that's where I want to highlight, right? If you want to say Tartaglia is a main DPS on-field Hydro carry, hack and slash Hydro applicator, as you guys can see how powerful a Hydro character can be even when his field time is severely limited, being the case of Tartaglia. So what worries me is that if Ayato does come out, I do think the role best suited for him at the moment for a Hydro character is that of a main DPS, but we have to be very careful of making someone that's similar to Tartaglia being like a hack and slash main DPS. We can allow him to be not a hyper carry, because hyper carries, while it also being a Hydro unit, can open the doors to some really insane over-the-top reactions, such as having him play with Xiangling, having him play with Ganyu, with Ayaka. In many cases would just feel excessive, and without some sort of internal cooldown gating his DPS, you're gonna see some really insane numbers that we haven't been seeing for a while with these DPS units. However, if miHoYo decides to choose to let the floodgates open and design Ayato as this main DPS on-field, relatively quick hack and slash, I'm assuming he's a sword user with his sprite, then we really have to look to his multipliers. Is he going to be, like I've always been saying, a character that hits frequently but not as hard, or infrequently but very hard? What's his burst going to be like? Is his burst going to allow him to be kind of like Raiden Shogun for a period of time, go berserk mode? What is his elemental skills? It's going to be a skill-based ability like Xingqiu, or it's going to be an infusion-based ability kind of like Tartaglia, Hu Tao, and those characters, both of which will take him into different directions. If Ayato is a character that plays around his burst skill and it's going to be one giant hit like Tartaglia, we're going to be pairing him, of course, try to pair him with Bennett and scale up his numbers. But I think with Tartaglia already fulfilling that role, Ayato's going to be something a little different. Now the question is, do I think he has Hydro infusion somewhere in his kit? I do think so, because looking at his sprite, unless that's his weapon literally looks like a Hydro sword, or that's going to be an infusion. And of course, it's best to not draw too many conclusions from his sprite, but I can't help but think if this character is not a Hydro main DPS that can sit on the field and deal damage through the Hydro element, then we're gonna have some really conflicting roles for the Hydro units, and considering there's not many to begin with, that might be a problem. Now, let's talk about his compatibility, because I think Ayato as a character is going to be one of those characters that just works with so many units. because he's Hydro. Electro Charge is probably the best reaction that involves Electro, and then we have Vaporize, of course, super popular. We have Freeze. So essentially, Hydro is the centerpiece to every single element, and with the 4-piece Viridescence is a non-issue for Hydro to get the Viridescence buffing. And Crystallize, let's just ignore Crystallize at this point, because nobody runs teams strictly for Crystallize. It's always a byproduct. Depending on how Ayato's kit works, he's either going to be a part of burst teams, or he's going to be a part of consistent damage on field team, or he can be partaking in a hyper carry team as the hyper carry himself. All of these are exciting roles for him to play, and it doesn't really matter what role he ends up being. There's a whole slew of characters he can work with: Ganyu, Kaya, Ayaka, Kazuha, Raiden Shogun, Fischl, Beidou. The list just continues to roll off the tongue because he's a Hydro character, and it doesn't matter how you design a Hydro character, they're always going to find many teams that they can fit into, right? Look at Kokumi, look at Xingqiu, look at Tartaglia. You can't hold these characters back, and I think picking up Ayato is going to be a good choice for most people's accounts, even if you're free to play. Now, if he does drop with, Ayaka, Kazuha, then I'll do a closer and more in-depth breakdown of the advantages of owning an Ayato. But so far, it doesn't really matter what his kit is shaping up to be. It's the element right here that really highlights how good of a character he can potentially be. And let's forget about the Hydro Resonance, because while yes, it's one of the weaker ones out there, the benefits of having Hydro characters is it just severely outweighs the negatives of its resonance. For example, if you're gonna not pair two Hydros together simply because of the resonance, or you think it's wasteful, I think that at that point it's going to be a non-issue for most people. Alright, so with that said, we're just gonna finish off with talking about Ayato's longevity, because I think a lot of people are worried that when they pick up a character, well, how long is this character going to be relevant in the game? Is he going to stay consistently strong, or is MiHoYo going to gut him a couple patches down the road, or is he going to be released incomplete, kind of like what Yaimiko is, and then eventually gets patched up, kind of like what happened to Kokomi? I think Ayato, if he doesn't get released with a dedicated artifact set, you're going to have to default to some weird wacky set. For example, depending on what he scaled off of, you're going to get the 2-piece Heart of Depth, and if he scales off of his burst and he becomes a burst support, then you're going to probably get the 2-piece Noblesse. If he's a DPS unit and like on-field DPS, does he scale off of what, like attack? Does he scale off HP? What does he scale off of? What? Depending on that, you're going to pair another 2-piece either Tenacity or 2-piece Gladiators, whatever, Shimenawas, right? If he doesn't have an artifact set. But my thinking is there's a good chance next patch he might come out, he might have his own artifact set, and along with another artifact set, because it's about time MiHoYo release another artifact, because hey, we all need something to burn our resins in. So if you release Ayato, give him a dedicated artifact set along with maybe a Shao artifact set, let's Copium, then we can start to see the value, the longevity. We can work out exactly how this character is going to age through the patches. And as we approach Dendro, I don't think Hydro is really going to be on the chopping board here for MiHoYo. In fact, I think there's only going to be facelifts for certain reactions and element in the case of maybe Electro, hopefully, through Dendro, right? So don't need to worry too much about reactions with Hydro falling out of line. Vaporize is still going to be wildly powerful. What are they going to do? Make Electro and Dendro have a 3x multiplier, right? There's no way. It's not going to happen. Vaporize and Melt are still going to be your top dogs for a long time. Freeze just doesn't seem like it's going away at all. And if anything, Hydro plus Dendro might add a new interesting element for you to play around with. So snagging up a great solid on-field Hydro character seems like a very smart move to make. With that said, I don't look at leaks. This is Walrus, just sharing my thoughts, my opinions. Please comment down below. Even if you've looked at leaks, right, you can comment down below. I'm not gonna, stop you guys. I'm really curious. What do you guys think Ayato is gonna do? How do you think he's gonna affect the current landscape of the game? Both for people who have read leaks, who have not read leaks. Let's hear it down in the comments. I know this is a longer video. If you guys made it all the way to the end, thank you guys so much. Please comment PP. I don't know how you're gonna write that. You can write 2 P's, you can write PEPE. or Pepe, whatever. I've taken enough of your time. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, urge y'all to stay safe and peace.